Eduardo Garcia Aguilar has long called himself a professional foreigner. In addition to being a novelist and a poet, he's had a long career as a special correspondent for Agence France-Presse, and his work there has taken him all over the world. He's had extended stays in two places that might be called the capital of the Americas and the capital of Europe, Mexico City and Paris. I'd like to read a story from his collection of short stories, Luminous Cities, entitled Garrets at the End of the World. The garrets of marvelous cities are usually favorable territory for exercising the pleasures of the imagination. Situated on the wide corridors of sinister buildings, at the top of spiral staircases where the dying odor of time wanders, these ingenious jails stir fever and delirium. Compared to great mansions or immense apartments, the garret demand from the inhabitant a strict spatial control, and bodily contact there is easier and more exciting. A great worldwide brotherhood of garret residents exists, mostly composed of foreigners. Thus, as in remote epochs, the hermit lovers of hair shirts and meditation used to hide in caverns, the modern heirs of that spiritual army choose the top floor rooms to feed their dementia. One of these dwellers used to like to read at night Rubén Dario's poem dedicated to exalting the wolf that the saint wished to redeem by bringing into the world of men. He was a thin, emaciated man with flaccid lungs and sunken cheeks. A greenish skeleton, like some kind of moribund being, he would pass the evening reciting aloud verses of the modernist poet, whom he admired more than anything else in the world. His admiration for the prince of Latin American language became more intense the more he consumed immense cigarettes of hashish and loose gitan tobacco. In the late night hours, he would wander the back streets of Barcelona's Gothic quarter in search of dope dealers and procurers of vice and perversion. One time he was walking along the city's breakwaters, and in the distant afternoon discerned a golden ship that had been refused entry to the port. A beautiful shining ship, it reflected the sun's slanting rays as its shadow spread over the Mediterranean. Sitting with a few friends on one of the rock breakers, he drank gin from a bottle and cursed the port authorities. For more than an hour, while the sun shone ever more intensely on the hull, his obsession turned to the need of rescuing the anchored ship. Taking the last swig from the bottle, he suddenly jumped into the sea and swam a few meters against the stingy force of the water, which seemed to devour him as his friends looked on in astonishment. But death can't snatch such beings capable of challenging the sea on the altars of image or caprice. She knows how to distinguish those who lovingly sacrifice their lives for a beautiful memory or strange adventure, and thus don't really deserve the fatal blow of the parkai, but on the contrary, the Sith's indulgence and the doleful harpy's caress. This man, resident of pensions and garrets whose only capital is a black suitcase full of his book collection, has passed through the world like a phantom, from city to city, fleeing from work, from steady employment and commitment. All we hear from him are the sporadic letters that always come from a garret different than the one to which his innumerable friends, disciples, and admirers send their return letters that never reach him. Where is he now? A few people affirm they've seen him in Trieste working as a gardener for some distant relatives of Palmeron. As proof, they offer a fabulous orchid cultivated by those old ladies that only flowers once every 4 years. In the hothouse they adore like a sacred niche full of idols. They say he used to seclude himself there to write in the ramshackle, lugubrious warehouses of a glorious city that in its times was the crossroads of all known worlds. Other travelers have seen him while passing through Carrera, where he was working as a waiter in a hospice for Benedictine monks. The proof is a piece of marble he used to settle a debt he had with a Colombian sculptor he met in Brindisi. A geologist poet contracted in the mercury mines of Yakutsk said the garret hermit was seen on a whaler in the Caspian Sea in company of several Ukrainian dissidents who adopted him for a while. A few miserable beings from his home country nicknamed him the literary guest and criticized the fact he had spent 2 weeks in their apartment on Rue Bonaparte in Paris without ever picking up the check at a restaurant or bistro. Several times he's been seen drinking coffee the entire afternoon at some dreary locale, a Trotskyite bookstore in Stockholm where with the first paid cup he could drink refills. In Berlin, they saw him working alongside Turks demolishing an old warehouse. There he fell in love with a woman who fancied Latin Americans and supported and pampered him for several weeks before he escaped to take a solitary voyage through Bulgaria. The poets from Bogota assure he was there for a week, his eyes bulging in terror, refusing to greet his friends, and they describe the macabre rictus of his face when he watched from the hilltops the tenacious nocturnal fire at the Palace of Justice. Since then, nobody has heard any more about him, and those who learned so much from his life wish for a clue to his whereabouts. His first name is Miguel, and his last name is De Francisco, for which one can well imagine and understand his devotion to Rubén Darío's poem about the gentle Saint Francis of Assisi. He's no more than 37, but his desire to look like the French Renaissance poet Clément Marot makes him seem a bit older. He doesn't like to drink milk, and he detests oranges. He can't stand the dreary atmosphere of beach resorts and suffers from allergies to thermal baths. He thinks North American writers, including Hemingway, are stupid and abhors committed poetry. When things were going well for him, he was a regular at the restaurant Garrets in Barcelona and the bar Tales in the same city, where they considered him the last best absinthe drinker. He knows by heart entire stories and poems by the Argentine writer Jorge Luis Borges, including his poem about Chesterton's battle at Lepanto, but he gets really upset when people label him Borgesian. He doesn't believe in revolution or democracy, and he would love to have been a Renaissance merchant or a Portuguese traveler dedicated to doing business in the Malay Islands. Among his extravagances figure his consideration of Núñez Cabeza de Vaca, the precursor of the new Latin American narrative, and Spain, the first country of Africa. Another of his deficits is that he still likes women and hopes to convert himself into history's ultimate heterosexual. He doesn't wear blue jeans or leather jackets. He prefers pants of woven fabric, blue shirts, black shoes, and purple socks. As a child, he dreamt of being a high prelate in the Catholic Church and for a while contemplated becoming the first Latin American pope. He drinks Coca-Cola and his favorite women are Lauren Bacall and Mia Farrow. He hates Woody Allen and Julio Iglesias. He's never voted in his life, nor does he even consider doing so. He likes rock music and Chopin, Rubens and Paul Klee, Senegalese music, and spaghetti. He once talked to Julio Cortázar. He considered Cioran a philosopher for withered old men and has never read a book of sociology. Some people think he died in a car accident. Others suppose he entered an Orthodox monastery in Greece, although I'm inclined to believe he's a collective invention of the Garret dwellers. From having imagined him so much, they've ended up converting themselves into his replica, wandering through the world attempting to create him, and so give solace to readers, skeptics, and pot smokers. Garrets at the End of the World, from Luminous Cities by Eduardo Garcia Aguilar. Available at aliformpublishing.com and Amazon.com.